Bdtv. I am Karen Tan. Namo Buddhaya. I'm glad to present today's program, and I hope that you are ready to listen to another talk on a different topic. Very often, we begin our programs with enlightened sermons by renowned and highly qualified monks coming from different parts of the world. Today, our preacher will deliver a superb sermon on the topic, vowing and bowing from the sensual to the profound. Here is Venerable Ajahn Achalo, Bhikkhu of Australia, to speak on this superb topic. Vowing and bowing from the sensual to the profound. This is again an uplifting, motivating, and inspiring, and it will help you renew your faith and deepen your knowledge in the Dhamma.
At that time that I would commit to 10 more years after, and then I felt it would be good to make a sincere, meaningful vow in a special place. And I had been to Bodh Gaya, I'd been to the 4 holy sites after my 6th Pansa, 4 years previous to that. And I'd had some very nice meditation in Bodh Gaya, but I wasn't quite ready to go back for some years after my first experience in India, being sensitive young monk that I was. But I felt like, no, I want to go back. I think I'm ready now. So I went back after my 10th rainy season retreat, and I made that vow to be a bhikkhu for 10 more years. And I began sitting longer sessions. So one of the vows I'd made was to sit before the meal and to sit after the meal and to sit again in a certain number of hours. I can't exactly remember exactly. I think it was 6 hours. I think that was my first iteration of committing to. I was also doing some of the full-length prostrations and circumambulations and chanting. But I remember one day I was, we'd been to Vulture's Peak the day before. I'd done a long session in meditating on top, and I think I got a little bit of sunstroke because I came out in the morning and I was feeling kind of nauseous. And I was thinking, I was sitting under the Bodhi tree and I had the thought, oh, go back and sleep. You're actually sick. Just go back and sleep. But then I had another thought, no, it's not about just being peaceful. It's about being consistent in effort and making more effort. You just stay here and fulfill your vow. And as I had that thought, a Bodhi leaf fell into my right palm. Lovely little palm-shaped Bodhi leaf. And the sense that I had was that the devas of the Bodhi tree were saying, that's right, Ajahn Achalo. You follow through on your adhitān. It's not just about being peaceful. It's about being consistent and committed. But there was another occasion, same time. This was my second attempt of a intensive practice in Bodh Gaya. The first one was after the 6th Pansa. But there was a lay person who was one of my attendants, was getting into some interpersonal stuff with other people. She wanted to meet with me, but she didn't show up at the set spot, and I had my vow, and I was like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I go, no, I'm going to the Bodhi tree. I'm going to fulfill my vow. And I was sitting under the Bodhi tree, and I felt a bit bad. I felt like, oh, this person's been supporting me. They had a problem. I said I'd meet them, but I waited like half an hour after the appointment time, and I thought, no, I need to fulfill my vow. And I was sitting under the Bodhi tree, and I had the thought of, yeah, you need to fulfill your vow. Don't get caught up in other people's karma. You can talk after the temple closes, see what's going on. And another Bodhi leaf fell, this time into my left palm. So, and again, it was this sense of, yeah, it's like that I felt as though the devas of the Bodhi tree were saying, that's right, Ajahn Achalo, you keep focus on what you're doing here and don't get swayed by other people's karma too much. And then finally there was I was doing some full-length prostrations, and I just fulfilled the vow, and I made another vow. I think I'd vowed to do 4,000 full-length prostrations, and then I made a vow to do another 3,000. So I just finished the 4,000. And Ling Rinpoche, the reincarnated teacher of the Dalai Lama, walked in front of my bowing board, and I went and said hello to him under the Bodhi tree, and he handed me a Bodhi leaf. So there was just an interesting synchronicity of the fact that I just fulfilled that first vow, and now this illustrious Lama walked right in front of my bowing board and gave me there was a bit of a sense of a reward for having fulfilled that vow, and Anumodana for making a subsequent vow. So yeah, that's one story about Bodhi leaves. And I kept those Bodhi leaves, actually. I framed them kind of left, right, and center as a recollection of those experiences.
John, as you're talking, I'm remembering that you were actually my inspiration for doing the certain number of large number of contacted you when I had this big aspiration to bow 100,000 times, and you gave me a lot of encouragement. So
I only accumulated 17,000 in Bodh Gaya. So I noticed that if you bow a lot, when you come to sit, it hurts. So I changed my vow to sitting more.
Yeah, this word aditana is one which Ajahn Nisabo used, and you've used a lot. And it's translated as a strong determination. That's how they translate it in the Goenka tradition. And different teachers mean different things when they say it. And I've heard this kind of interesting way that Thai people will use it as like, if I see a sign, then I will do some hard practice. Like I'll sit for the next 3 hours if I see a shooting star or something like that. What could you explain that as you understand it? That form of aditana? So
yeah, I think it still is in the realm of aditana, but it's like making a determination. So you make a determination to do a certain practice, and we understand that we do this to build on our determination parami. So it's like you make the aditana, and then you follow through with determination to complete the aditana. And then there's the way that people dedicate merit. So they'll do a certain practice or be generous in a certain way, or keep extra precepts, etc., do extra practice. And then sometimes they dedicate the merit. They make a determination after fulfilling as well, like, due to this merit, may I, be able to sell my house so that I can move to another state, or whatever it is, whatever a person's thinks. But they follow through with the virtuous activity first. And sometimes it's a bit like bargaining with the devas or the merit of the Buddha, but it can be very skillful, and it can motivate a lot of skillful things, and people do a lot of practice with goals in mind. Yeah. And there's places, of course, which are famous for where people make determinations and requests, and some places are considered more potent than others for getting a result. So, yeah.
Ajahn, I think we have a lot of questions about devas and aditanas, but I actually wanted to begin just with a much more humble story with you, which you mentioned this progression in your first 5 years of barely making it to the end of your first year and then barely to the end of your second. And I found that to be very humanizing. Would you just maybe start us off, I guess the second question or third, but with talking about your kind of struggle through the first few years of being a monk?
Yeah, it's interesting. And I do think, obviously, it does tie in with faith, because the thing that made it, obviously, I had a lot of struggles turning up as a 23-year-old from Australia who hadn't had any much religious training to speak of, and hadn't been especially disciplined in my life, and life had been quite sensual. To turn up at Wat Nanachard at the age of 23, and the 3 a.m. morning bell, and walking barefoot on the stones for 5 kilometers. In those days, the roads hadn't been sealed and the alms rounds were longer, and oftentimes there wasn't an attendant behind you. There wasn't as many people coming to ordain, so you'd be having 2 full bowls of sticky rice with one strap going that way, another strap going that way, barely able to breathe, the extra weight pushing your feet down harder onto the sharp stones. And you know how it is, having to get back before the Ajahn. And it wasn't easy, sleeping on a straw mat and mosquitoes and the whole thing. And then also the kind of fault-finding culture among Western monastics. It's normal that we actually have to have that. It's seeing the drawbacks of samsara and conditioned reality, which makes us seek for something better. So that's what gets us there. But then when we're there and we all have that and we're all living together, a really highly developed fault-finding mind, and we're all living together in that soup, it's not easy. I mean, and I had been someone who'd worked in a vegan cafe and New Age people, shiatsu people, yoga people, and we would kind of hug and call each other babe, and everybody smelt nice. And so there I was with these kind of smelly fault-finding monks in this situation where everything was like, don't do it that way, do it this way. And it wasn't easy. And there was nobody to hug, and nobody was calling me babe, and I wasn't calling anyone else babe. And it's pretty dry, and there was a lot that needed to be cultivated. I mean, again, cultivating metta is another very, very important component of practice, because one has to learn how to support oneself through that process of, as Lord Buddha explains, you need to put a wet stick on a dry bank so that it dries out, so that it can catch light. But that process of the stick drying out, nobody says it's fun, And I felt like I was dying. And in a way you are. Your old personality, who you've been, is dying, and you're learning how to be a monk, different conventions. And so, yeah. And I never thought, to be honest, in those days that I would ever be someone that would be able to say that I sat 3,000 hours of meditation in Bodh Gaya, or that, I established a monastery, or I built a chedi, supervise the planting of 30,000 trees, or the various things that one can look back on when you're in your 50s. And it really is a testament to the fact that if you stick to things sincerely and consistently, you develop a capacity to do more. And when you look back after some decades, you manage to accomplish some things, not the least of which is managing to stay in the robes for 30 years. So yeah. And it was really interesting when my aditana kind of petered out at Wat Map Jan. I was like, why is my practice? I'm in a good place. I have faith in Buddha Dhamma. I love my Ajahn. Why is there no energy for practice? And then when the voice came, are you going to continue in practice? And I'm like, yeah. And then, okay, I'm going to continue. This energy came back. I'm like, boom. Oh, I wish I'd worked that out at the beginning of the rainy season. There would have been more energy for practice. So I saw then like the power of determination. If we have a commitment, it's related to commitment. So if we're deeply committed, if we're not indulging plan B, plan C, we've deeply made that commitment with resolution, then a lot of energy becomes available. And then it was similar when I came to establish a monastery. I wanted to leave often in the first year, but I made a commitment to stay here for 3 years. And it was after 3 years that it was, okay, I can do this. But if I didn't have that 3-year commitment, I wouldn't have got through the first year. I knew it would be hard, but it was approximately 10 times harder than I thought. So it's like, it's like, well, what do you do when it's much, much harder than I remember having that argument with myself, kind of like, I'm just going to give up. I knew it would be hard, but it's just too hard. And I had to kind of, have a dialogue with myself. It's like, okay, well, one of the things that helped me get through that period of time was understanding that hundreds of other people were happy to support the establishment of a monastery, and many of my students were happy I was staying in Thailand. And so I was reflecting on the fact that at the moment there's one miserable person, me, and there's hundreds of others who are quite happy. And if I leave, there'll be hundreds of sad people, and that probably won't be helpful for my happiness if knowing that. So I just stuck to it. And then after 3 years, you develop a bit more capacity for what is at first just exhausting. And so, yeah, determination, commitment, patient endurance, they all overlap, don't they? And also faith, if you do have faith in the value of what you're doing, and if you have enough metta to support yourself through the process, all of these things are linked.
Tanajan, you talk about being like a really sensual person when you were growing up, liking, good tasty food and nice smells and not liking bad smells, etc. And then coming to Buddhism, where there is this renunciate ethos, and going back to the earliest texts of the Buddha himself, really saying that, talking about the dangers of sensuality. And it sounds like you've really found creatively ways to channel this love of beauty, love, appreciation of pleasure into these, path allowable means, such as creating a community, planting trees, monastery beautification, and the meditation. And I'm curious if you could just speak more to any of those, like the allowable beauty of a Buddhist life.
Right. I'm actually slightly embarrassed about how beautiful my monastery is. But I never set the intention to make the monastery as beautiful as I could. But the way my mind works is I actually really don't like building projects. Like, there are monks that love to get out and look at the rebar and the concrete and the ditches and the dirt. No, that's not the part I like, right? I don't like that part. I like the designing part, and I like the finishing touches part, and I don't like everything else in between. That, just dust, noise, mud, deliveries, having to meet with contractors and looking over the finances, all of that is not enjoyable to me. The thing that gets me through, I have a capacity to visualize. So the thing that gets me through my own projects is visualizing it being beautiful at the end. And so, because I have quite a gift for visualization, things turn out quite beautiful at the end. And but we have to work with what we have, and so that's how I get through it. If there was another monk here that would be happy to build the toilet block, for example, and delegate that, I probably wouldn't be as. I've just finished a toilet block, and it's really quite beautiful. So, which is kind of ridiculous, but it does have a lovely sitting space on top of the toilet block under the trees. So it's like there's things that you can do, when you try to make it as harmonious as possible with the nature, try to make it multifunctional. There's other things that you learn. But yeah, I think the Dhamma, beautiful in the beginning, beautiful in the middle, beautiful in the end, or lovely in the beginning, lovely in the middle, lovely in the end. So someone with my character probably has to put more emphasis on samatha. When you don't know how to do that at first, you don't know how to use your reflective mind, at least I didn't, to hold a beautiful perception in mind, especially when you have a gift for fault finding. So how you learn how to hold a beautiful perception in the mind, and that was one of the wonderful things about practicing in Bodhgaya, is it's easy to recollect the Buddha. It's easy to, you're feeling a bit kind of sleepy, you're a bit grumpy, or there's some obnoxious noise behind you, and you open your eyes and you see this beautiful Bodhi tree, and you think of what Lord Buddha accomplished there, and you see these people expressing their faith in various ways, and it's so uplifting. And so holding the beautiful example of the Buddha and his path to his enlightenment and his impeccable conduct and understanding the enormous benefit he brought into the universe, like gladdening the mind with Buddhanusati and making it really real by going to the place where it really happened, and then allowing that joy. Like when you know how to give rise to a wholesome type of joy, then really holding that, like don't skipping over that. Okay, did the joy part? No, it's just like allowing the mind to be pervaded and nourished and become full of that wholesome joy. Then then we're talking about piti and sukha, these kind of factors of jhana, right? So if you know how to do this skillfully, this can lead to ekagata, or at least a significant amount of collectedness, depending on how much parami a person has in that area. And then, for myself, the recollection of the future Buddha, of course, Maitreya, bringing to mind the example of Maitreya, the Buddha who will have the more metta than any previous Buddha, and just kind of thinking about him sometimes, what he must be like, what his example is, incredible benefit he will bring to the universe. And things like that.
Ajahn, I feel like you're speaking of pilgrimage, and this is kind of one of the more, to Bodh Gaya, one of the more pure manifestations of Buddhanusati and this wholesome route to, Piti and Sukha and Sara. What about Devanusati, recollection of devas? I feel like this is something you've spoken about a good deal. How does one practice recollection of the devas? And
so I think as Buddhists in a Theravadan tradition, it's actually everywhere. It's just a matter of, do we notice it, and do we bring it into our heart? So, some people might get a bit nitpicky over whether it's sutta or whether it's commentarial, but when you have Lord Buddha, after practicing the austerities and having his insight into he's too tight, there was some analogy of a lute whose strings were too tight. And I can't even remember which deva that came, but a deity came and said, "It's true, Lord Buddha, that may have been Indra." And there's the example when, after his enlightenment under the Bodhi, I can't remember, one of the trees that he was sitting under in the 7 weeks after his enlightenment, where he's reflecting on the 5 spiritual powers. And is it Brahma Sahampati that comes and says, "It's true, Lord, my own passions faded under the previous Buddha, such and such." So when Brahma Sahampati makes the statement, my passions faded under such and such. So for me, I would understand that as he's basically saying he's either a Sakadagami or an Anagami, that by listening to a teaching of a Buddha, he became established in an Aryan stage. And so those examples, for whatever reason, they're just really real to me. I don't see them as metaphor. I don't see them as embellishment. I basically, when I see that, I thought, okay, cool. There's a Brahma that attained to a high level of realization under a previous Buddha, who's obviously, when you attain to a high level of realization, you would have a special regard for Buddhas. So it's not so surprising that a Brahma Deva is rejoicing in the enlightenment of the next Buddha and right there by his side. And then you have other examples of Indra. I really love Sakadeva Raja. I'm a fan of Indra. And you have this example of when, after the Buddha has taught the 1,000 Matthatera ascetics and they've all become arahants, and the Buddha is making his victorious return to Rajgir at the previous invitation of the king, that Indra is dancing in front of him and reciting poetry as he enters into Rajgir. And it's like there is a certain amount of love and appreciation and joy that's allowed, It's like, and Indra is a really good example of that. It's like, here's this really cool deva, like dancing and reciting poetry, he's dressed as a Brahmin in front of the Buddha. So it's like, well, why is that? Well, it's a special accumulated parami, I would assume, that is behind being born as the king of the devas. And in a subsequent sutta, Indra had some questions, Sakadeva Raja had some questions to the Buddha, and it states that he had vision of Dhamma, that Indra himself attained to a noble path. So this is, for myself, in an age which is, let's face it, quite depressing. If you turn on the news and have a look at what's happening in the world, for me to open the heart to the fact that there are thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, possibly millions of devas who are Aryans, it really changes how you understand Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha as refuge. And if this world is going to hell in a handbasket, it's like, well, there are other worlds where there's like literally millions of Aryans, and they're not necessarily wearing robes, but they have insight. They've had insight into anicca, dukkha, anatta. They have hiriyottapa. They have conscience and shame. They have unshakable faith. And so that's just such a wonderful thing to allow into consciousness, that it's not as dismal as it looks. There's a lot of brightness out there if we allow ourselves to be cognizant of it. And for myself, I don't even have to really try to believe it. I just do believe it. And that's probably part of my past life tendencies. I don't have to try to believe that Indra exists. And if I will tell one story, one has to be careful, because I've had some of my own experiences, but as you know, we have to be careful what we say and how we say it. And it's sometimes safer to say, like, there's reasons that I don't have doubt in Devas, and I'll just say that much. But one can talk about other people's experiences. So when Lumpur Biak came to our relic enshrining ceremony at an Andagiri at the end of 2019, like you do, you go off to his room and you ask him, Ajahn, anything special happen? Anything come? Those with faith who know these teachers, and so Lumpur Biak said, and I don't think you will mind me saying this, I mean, basically he is renowned for his special abilities, and nobody doubts them as far as I'm aware, so I feel okay about saying something that he said to me, something that occurred in this monastery. So we were enshrining relics into the crowns of the 4 Buddha statues on the highest level of the Chedi. And we had put in jewels. I think I can't remember, it's 7 types of jewels that you add to relics as an offering to the relics. And there were sponsors, people, Thais love this. Thais love offering stuff to relics and Chedis, and especially if it's at the top part of the Chedi. So apparently Indra came to the ceremony and manifested emanation bodies and rained down flowers, which turned to wish-fulfilling jewels as they hit the auras of all of the people who attended. Now, and Lumpur Biak said, now, if people had known that, most people wouldn't have known it. Most people would have experienced it as a feeling of rapture, or a feeling of joy, some kind of tingle in the air that you don't know what it is, but you know you feel happy. You're glad you're there. But Lumpur Biak could see that Indra had manifested emanation bodies and rained down flowers on people. And as those flowers hit people's auras, they turned to wish-fulfilling jewels. And if the people had made the wish then for the particular thing they wanted to accomplish, the chances of them accomplishing it would have been much greater. So it's just interesting. It's like, yeah, in this day and age, Indra, the king of the Devas, who supports virtue, of course he would be aware of a Arahant kind of coming to a relic enshrining ceremony in Thailand and rejoice and give a little bit of blessing to those who attended. So there's kind of a contemporary real life story of Sakadeva Raja still doing stuff with the sasana, and why wouldn't he? If he attained to stream entry, and if he's I think it's the case that, is it the case, you probably know better, I seem to remember that it was Indra that composed the verse, Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa, and then the Itipiso verses. It was Indra that put his hands in Anjali and said, a good word of the Blessed One's reputation has spread as follows. He, the Blessed One, is indeed the pure one, the perfectly enlightened one. So it's like when we're reciting verses that we recite every day, well, Sakadeva Raja wrote this from his own experience, knowing that Buddha is the teacher of gods and humans. He taught him. It's like, for me, it's just everywhere and it's obvious, but we don't notice it. And will I notice it? So,
Tanachan, you talk about a practice which is in the suttas, this Sankarupapati Sutta, the rebirth by aspiration, about by Western teachers, but it is there in the canon, and it might be somewhat noxious to some modern Buddhists who think, oh, I'm going to be a stream enter or an arahant in this lifetime, and thinking about a future life is just, some kind of God worship, or, just dismissing it like that. But for people who have faith in the suttas, and how would you actually recommend that for someone who does aspire to arahantship? What deva realm actually do you think might be the most conducive to that attainment, to being surrounded by beings who are practicing the Dhamma?
Yes, interesting subject that you brought up. I think modern people's minds are affected by nihilism much more than they realize. People who grew up in a very materialist culture that we grew up in. So there's an aversion. There's an aversion to thinking about subsequent lives or parallel realms in some people. And those people tend to think that those of us who have faith in these things are a bit strange. From where I sit, of course, in what is still the heartland of Theravadan Buddhism, surrounded by millions of faith types, those people seem a bit strange to us. And for us, rebirth is real, heavens are real, devas are real. And So I think the best place to aspire to be reborn in the Deva realms as a Buddhist practitioner, as a cultivator, as someone who wants to continue to cultivate, is Tushita heaven. Tushita heaven is literally called the heaven of the contented. So it's not a realm where beings are delighting a lot of sensuality. The reason they are contented, I asked Tanajan Anand, is because their mind are resonating with Upajjhara Samadhi. That's kind of the level of their experience. The baseline level of their experience is Upajjhara Samadhi. So it's like only wholesome thoughts, not many thoughts. And they can meditate. So beings in Tushita heaven are born apparently spontaneously on lotuses. And they can meditate and they can listen to Dhamma. And so apparently beings who have like long-term path aspirations, like those who are aspiring for Buddhahood, great discipleship, being foremost in certain qualities, they will rest between lives sometimes in Tushita, and they will, from Tushita, they will be able to review the most suitable rebirth to continue their cultivation. Because sometimes the world isn't in a state where it's so conducive or possible to cultivate virtue. If you're born at a time when there's a lot of non-virtue, your own virtue might be damaged. So sometimes these beings have to take a break and then find a suitable rebirth. So being born in that realm, Ajahn Anand describes it as being a realm for cultivators on Buddhist paths. So in terms of having Kalyanamitta, good examples. And it's also, if you go any higher than that, if you go to a Brahma realm, there's some danger of becoming deluded by the mind's radiance. So they can become more affected by vanity and conceit. But suppose you're in Tushita and you can see how much more Bharami all these devas have than you, that's not going to be conducive to becoming proud and deluded, right? It's like if I compare my Bharami to Maitreya's, for example, I'm like, whoa, it's very humbling in the nicest way. Having spent 16 Asankhyas and 100,000 eons, it's like, okay, wow, that's the real deal. But not everybody, apparently one does need quite potent merits and very strong faith, cultivated possibly for some lifetimes, to be born in Tushita. It's not that easy. So, is it the fourth heaven up? Chatu Maharaja, Davatingsa Yama Tushita. Yeah. So, but apparently, Yama Devas enjoy spending time alone, meditating and chanting, and it's an easier realm. So my recommendation is for people to aspire for Tushita, to be born in the presence of great practitioners. It's like if you try to jump higher, right, but you might not make it, you may land in Yama, right? So it's like you could be born as a Yama Deva, and it's just below Tushita. And sometimes I was talking with some Malaysian students who are here at the moment about, they were saying, I don't think I have the merit. I don't think I have the merit to be born in Tushita. What should I do? And I remember attending the Dalai Lama's teachings in Melbourne many years ago, and there was like, there's the people on the stage, and then there's the people in the front row, and then there's the people in the back of the stadium at the back row. But then there was also a screen outside where it was like telecast live, and there was the people outside. And so everybody was listening to the teachings. It's just probably when the Dalai Lama's kind of fame and teaching were peaking in the world, and a lot of people were going to see him wherever he went. So I see it as a bit like that, right? If you're a Yama Deva, you're outside listening to the teachings, looking at the screen. You're not on the stage, but you're hearing the teachings. You're in the presence of goodness. You're cognizant of it. It's right there. And so yes, Tushita Deva is a first choice, Yama Deva as a second choice. The danger of the Dawatingsa realm is apparently it's very sensual, and you can exhaust your merits. And also, most people understand that it's difficult to maintain a focus on practice with the level of sensuality, distraction, and entertainment that we currently have. In Dawatingsa, imagine that the food is nicer, the sounds are nicer, the tastes are nicer, the clothes are nicer, everything's nicer. How it's not going to be easy to focus on practice. So, and that heightened, that kind of superior pleasure is the result of merit. It's because people have been generous and kind and helped others to have happiness and contentment and joy, etc., comfort, that they experience such things. But there's a danger to developing more attachment to sensuality and exhausting merits as well. So but sometimes I think for some people, I think it is good. Yeah, I do think it is good to have a plan A. And so one thing it can stop you kind of speculating about it too much. Like, okay, that you just kind of make a decision. This is what I'm aiming for that. At the breakup of the khandas, may I be spontaneously reborn in Tushita, if not Tushita, Yama. And then may I practice Dhamma. May I always be born in the presence of those who are practicing rightly, practicing correctly. So that's a very important part of the aspiration. And then we don't actually have to think about it much. But after you meditate, you do dedicate merit to that. What we were talking about earlier, the determining merit. Due to this merit, I sat an extra hour. May I be spontaneously reborn in Tushita amongst wise companions. One keeps doing that to kind of keep laying down the causes. That's what it does. It says in the suttas, it does explain that is what one does, is sets the aspiration and the intention, and that nourishes the rebirth. So if a person has the accumulated merit, now this is the thing that's a bit tricky. See, it's a bit tricky because it's not just about knowing the right practices and having the best intentions and putting forth the effort. There is something to this. How long has somebody practiced? So with the person who has the view that, no, I'm going to become a Sotapanna, I'm going to become an Arahant in this life. It's not everybody actually has the accumulated merit, and the faculties aren't yet powerful enough necessarily, because it does take some lifetimes. It's a gradual training. If a person has the merit and the faculties and that's their aspiration, wonderful, may they succeed. If a person doesn't yet have the accumulated merit and power of faculties, it's still a good way to practice, because it's ripening that merit and it's ripening those faculties. But what do you do if you need a plan B and you haven't thought it through yet? It's like, suppose you're dying, you're not a stream enterer, there's a lot of pain in your body. What do you do in that moment? And so it's the two things together, isn't it? It's the present moment Dharma, practicing now for as much samadhi and as much insight as you possibly can. Okay, we all try to do that. And a sensible game plan for, suppose it doesn't come together completely in the way that I want, that you're just taking care of business. It's like, if you go to India, a simple matter of going to India, well, you take some vitamins, you take some supplements, you take some insect repellent, you take a warm sweater, you do a little bit of preparation for what you think you're likely to meet. So at the time of death, it's I think one of the reasons, this is talking a little bit earlier about people's nihilistic assumption. I think one of the reasons beings get born as ghosts is because they assume that when they die, that there won't be an experience left. There won't be any more experience. It's like that word dead, or they're dead, they died. And it's like, of course, to the experience of consciousness, the body dies and the mind has the next moment. And so I think it's often the case that sentient consciousness is there not feeling dead because they're still having experience. So we really need to give more attention to this and understand that the body dies and the mental continuum continues, and we need to have enough presence of mind and mindfulness to know, oh, the body died, I didn't die. There's still a feeling of I, funny enough, curiously enough, there's still experience. And so if we put some thought into at that moment, or as that moment approaches when the body is dying, one composes one's mind and goes to the next best situation, and don't expect to have a feeling of I'm dead. That it's not a feeling.
Thank you, Tanajan. And every day I do make the aspiration to, be reborn in a place where I can practice with diligence and care. So I appreciate you actually pointing that out to people. And speaking about Tusita Heaven, we might actually keep this live stream going for a bit longer. And if people want to jump onto Zoom early, they can, but we'll be here for a bit. You might just be hanging out in the waiting room, so to speak. And so, Tanajan, speaking of bodhisattvas and Tusita Heaven, where the bodhisattva was born, the life before his rebirth as the Buddha, someone in the chat is wondering about how Mahayana bodhisattvas play a role in your practice. And yeah, I'd be curious too. I mean, where does Guanyin or Green Tara or Avalokiteshvara fit? Are they devas like any others, or are they special category of being?
Yeah, so how do I relate to it? I wouldn't see a bodhisattva as a Mahayana bodhisattva or a Theravada bodhisattva. I would see a bodhisattva as a bodhisattva. And we have in the human world, the form world, during the dispensation of the Buddha, we have conventions, we have lineages, we have nikayas, but basically you have Buddhist practitioners. And for the Theravadins to embrace the existence of Maitreya is probably the easiest, because he's in the suttas. We understand it's an auspicious eon with 5 Buddhas. He's next. So that's like one that most people can take on. Other bodhisattvas, I think this also probably depends on past life imprints. Like some people just think of Kuan Yin and feel happy. They feel blessed when they think of Kuan Yin. So for me, that suggests past life practices and connections. And if a person doesn't feel that, no problem. You have Maitreya, you have Sakadeva Raja, there is other material. You have Brahma Sahampati. There is other deities that one can recollect with confidence. So for myself, bodhisattvas are bodhisattvas, but I do feel a connection with Avalokiteshvara, probably because of past karmic practices. I feel some karmic connection with Siddhikapa. So I actually went to 3 of the holy mountains that I hadn't been to in China this year. That had been on my bucket list for like literally 20 years. And I finally got to go to the other 3 holy mountains, Samantabhadras, Siddhikapas, and Manjushris. So yeah, for myself, I believe they exist. And I guess you could call them celestial bodhisattvas. And probably they have mandalas in Tushita heaven. So it's just whether or not one believes in that or not, and whether or not a practice is correct for you. For myself, I see it as Devanusati. So if you see a Mahayana bodhisattva as a deity in Tushita, some Mahayanas may say the Pure Land isn't Tushita, but Luang Por Nan says it is. What the Mahayanas refer to as Pure Lands is in the Tushita heavens. So yes, a deity in Tushita with enormous accumulated merits and beautiful qualities, who is intentionally sticking around longer for the sake of benefiting others. That's a gladdening. I remember early, I think I had these imprints for some time, because I remember when I was around that 6 panthas, I liked bodhisattvas more than I liked the Buddha. And I was asking myself, you're a Theravadan bhikkhu, why do you like bodhisattvas more than you like the Buddha? And so I had to do some inner investigation. And having had the training, the wonderful training of Wat Anachat with all of the going over the Vinaya rules, there's a lot of emphasis on the Vinaya Pitaka. And so it comes up again and again where the Lord Buddha does say, you foolish man, you foolish bhikkhu, and there's that sense one can get of the Buddha being quite a stern person with some fierce words to say. And I suppose I had a thought that if I was to place myself in front of the Buddha may say, you foolish man, you foolish bhikkhu, you. But then there's the stories of the bodhisattvas who stick around in samsara for the purpose of helping, especially the stubborn and slower, stupid beings. And I'm like, oh, I need some help. So the thought of having a being that you can pray to, who's going to be patient with you and kind to you, is very encouraging when you're struggling. So I would say now I have equal appreciation for Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. I've done some work in that area, and I have loving respect and gratitude to Lord Buddha. And practicing in Bodh Gaya actually helped in that process, because there's times there when you're meditating that it's as though you can feel the presence. It's probably the merit of the Buddha that I'm sure there's things that he did imparted a certain amount of his merit, so that when people came and paid respects, they would get a large amount of merit. So there's something there, subtle phenomenon. And when your mind gets peaceful enough, that there's some empathy with it, some resonance with it, it almost feels that you're meditating in the presence of the Buddha. And so when you feel the metta of the Buddha, you feel the merit of the Buddha, then you understand that before the Buddha was a bodhisattva, just like Avalokiteshvara or Kuan Yin. So of course he has the requisite compassion and metta equal to the bodhisattvas. He also, on top of that, has the immaculate purity with no attachment left to anything at all, not even attachment to benefiting beings, which is the last attachment that the high-level bodhisattva practitioners have. The only attachment that they have is wanting to help others to realize what they understand to be cessation of suffering. So,
Tanajan, yeah, these are great answers. This next question from Katie. Dear Ajahn, in other realms, is there as much technology as there is in the human world? It's something I feel increasingly concerned about. Actually, Bhikkhu Bodhi, out of seemingly nowhere, recently was just saying that, devas don't like the technology, and they kind of, or don't like centers of technology, and they'll stay away from that. So, yeah, what is your take on this?
I can't speak from my personal experience of what tech the devas have, but I would think that I don't think we're the only human world out there, and I do think that there are other world systems where there are worlds where there is technology. So, in terms of the form world, I'm sure there's a lot of tech in a lot of other places. I think the devas communicate telepathically. I think they know what each other is thinking. It's quite a transparent experience. And I asked Ajahn recently, I have a feeling when on our Uposatha days, when 20 or 30 villages come, I just had this intuitive feeling that there's more devas than humans coming to take the precepts. So I wanted to check that. And Lumponan said it is true that a lot of Nagas and tree devas come to take the precepts and on the Uposatha day because they want to cultivate their virtue further. And I said, do they listen to the Dharma talk? And Tanajan says they do, but they don't. What they listen to is the flow of the mind. And then their set of khandas interprets that. It's like they have their own translation system. They can actually deduce the Dhamma that you're talking about, but they're getting it from it's like the vibration or the resonance then is interpreted however they understand language. So that's interesting.
Let us celebrate the beauty and influence of children's songs filled with goodness. These melodies are more than just music. They are tools to install kindness, joy, and values that shape bright futures. Singing such songs sparks positivity, builds character, and creates hearts full of love and compassion. Let's encourage every child to embrace this song and spread their meaningful message far and wide. Together, we can make the world a more beautiful place, one song at a time. This song, entitled We Shall All Overcome by Tan Hua Che. Please enjoy every bit of it.
We shall all overcome, we shall all overcome, we shall all overcome the greed in us. We shall all overcome, we shall all overcome, we shall all overcome the hate in us. We shall conquer illusions and find true liberty, that which leads us through this troubled sea. We shall go beyond the shore, be peaceful evermore, 'cause we cry and sigh no more. And together we'll see everlasting peace, when all our fear and worry cease. We shall all overcome, we shall all overcome, we shall breathe in us. We shall all overcome. We shall all overcome. We shall all overcome the hate in us. We shall conquer illusions and find true liberty, that which leads us through this troubled sea. We shall go beyond the shore, be peaceful forevermore, 'cause we cry and sigh no more. Then together we'll see everlasting peace, when all our fear and worry cease. We shall all overcome. We shall all overcome the fear in us. We shall all overcome. We shall all overcome. We shall all overcome the doubts in us. Clear away our minds' confusion. Ever watchful till the end. Bravely walk our way to freedom land. We shall dwell in peace and love, rejoicing evermore. Rejoice, we have found the Lord. By this law shall we live, through this law shall we see the joy and peace of being free.
Jataka stories are recollections of some of the Buddha's previous lives when he was known as Bodhisatta. Bodhisatta means one who strives hard to serve all beings selflessly. These stories are excellent sources of motivation that can guide us in the right direction on our path to success. Please encourage both children and adults to read these stories and watch these programs. They will surely help guide them towards success. Now, here is Kaha Dipayana Jataka story.
กันนะหัตถีปายนะชาดก ชาดกว่าด้วยความรักที่มีต่อบุตรในสมัยพุทธกาลเมื่อครั้งที่พระบรมศาสดาสัมมาสัมพุทธเจ้าประทับอยู่ณพระวิหารเชตวันทรงปรารภภิกษุผู้กษัตริย์รูปหนึ่งจึงทรงตรัสถามกับภิกษุรูปนั้นดูก่อนภิกษุได้ยินว่าเธอกษัตริย์จริงหรือ
จริงพระเจ้าค่ะ
ดูก่อนภิกษุเมื่อครั้งพระพุทธเจ้ายังไม่เกิดขึ้นโบราณกบัณฑิตได้บวชในลัทธินอกพุทธศาสนาไม่มีความยินดียังประพฤติพรหมจรรย์อยู่ได้กว่า50 ปีไม่แสดงความที่ตนกษัตริย์ให้ปรากฏแก่ใครๆเพราะกลัวหิริโอตตัปปะจะทำลายเธอบวชในศาสนาที่จะนำออกจากทุกข์เห็นป่านนี้ตั้งอยู่เฉพาะพระพักตร์ของพระพุทธเจ้าผู้เป็นครูเช่นเราเหตุไรจึงทำความกระสันให้ปรากฏในท่ามกลางบริษัทสี่เหตุไรจึงไม่รักษาหิริโอตตัปปะของตนไว้เมื่อพระพุทธองค์ทรงตรัสพุทธโอวาทแก่ภิกษุรูปนั้นแล้วจึงทรงนำเรื่องในอดีตมาสาธกดังนี้ในอดีตการพระเจ้าโกสัมพิกะครองราชสมบัติอยู่ในพระนครโกสัมพีแคว้นวังสะครั้งนั้นณนิคมแห่งหนึ่งมีพราหมณ์2 คนมีสมบัติคนละ80 โกฏเป็นสหายรักกัน ทั้งสองเห็นโทษของกามคุณจึงนำทรัพย์สมบัติไปทำทานแล้วออกบวชเป็นดาบสสร้างอาสมอยู่ในป่าหิมพานต์
เอาละเราสร้างอาสมแล้วบำเพ็ญเพียรที่นี่ก็แล้วกัน
ที่สงบแบบนี้เราคงเข้าถึงฌานได้
ทีปายณดาบสและมันทัพพยดาบสบำเพ็ญเพียรอยู่ในป่าหิมพานต์ยังชีพด้วยเผือกมันและผลไม้อยู่5 ปีก็ยังไม่สามารถทำฌานให้เกิดขึ้นได้ล่วงไปจน50 ปีวันหนึ่งดาบสทั้งสองได้เดินทางไปหาเพื่อนชื่อมันทัพพยะที่แคว้นกาสีนายมันทัพพยะให้การต้อนรับเป็นอย่างดีและได้สร้างบรรณศาลาถวายและบำรุงด้วยปัจจัย4
เชิญพวกท่านอยู่ที่นี่ตามสบายเถิด
2 ดาบสอยู่ที่นั่น 3-4 พรรษาแล้วจึงลานายมันทัพพยะเที่ยวจาริกไปถึงเมืองพาราณสีอาศัยอยู่ในป่าช้าต่อมาทีปายณดาบสได้กลับไปที่บ้านของสหายอีกครั้งแต่มันทัพพยดาบสยังคงอาศัยอยู่ที่ป่าช้า
ท่านไม่ไปกับข้าหรือ
เชิญท่านเถิดข้าจะอยู่ที่นี่แหละ
อยู่มาวันหนึ่งมีโจรเข้าไปขโมยของในเรือนชาวบ้านพบเข้าก็พากันไล่จับโจรเมื่อจวนตัวโจรจึงรีบวิ่งเข้าป่าช้าแล้วทิ้งห่อทรัพย์ไว้ที่ประตูบรรณศาลาของมันทัพพยดาบส
โอ้ยไม่ไหวแล้วขนาดหนีเข้าป่าช้ายังตามมาอีกทิ้งสมบัติพวกนี้ไว้แล้วเพ่นหนีก่อนดีกว่า
ชาวบ้านที่ไล่จับโจรมาถึงป่าช้าเมื่อเห็นห่อสมบัติที่โจรทิ้งไว้หน้าบรรณศาลาก็เข้าใจว่ามันทัพพยดาบสเป็นโจรพากันด่าทอและรุมทำร้ายมันทัพพยดาบส
น้อยนักบวชชั่วตอนกลางวันเป็นนักบวชพอตกดึกกลายเป็นโจร
นั่นสิพวกเราปล่อยเอาไว้ไม่ได้ตืบมันเลยดีกว่า
เมื่อทุบตีต่อว่ามันทัพพยดาบสจนหนำใจแล้วชาวบ้านก็พาตัวส่งพระราชาพระราชาไม่ทรงพิจารณาให้ถี่ถ้วนก็สั่งให้ราชบุรุษเอาตัวไปเสียบหลาวเสีย
โจรชั่วแอบอ้างตัวเป็นผู้ทรงศีลแบบนี้ต้องจับไปเสียบหลาวทหารเอาตัวมันไป
พวกราชบุรุษนำตัวมันทัพพยดาบสไปเสียบหลาวไม้ตะเคียนในป่าช้าแต่เสียบหลาวไม่เข้าแม้จะลองเอาไม้สะเดาหรือหลาวเหล็กก็เสียบไม่เข้า
เจ้านี่มันต้องเล่นของแน่ๆเลยถึงเสียบหลาวไม่เข้า
มันทัพพยดาบสได้นึกถึงกรรมของตนในอดีตจึงเกิดญาณระลึกชาติได้เห็นว่าชาติก่อนนั้นตนเกิดเป็นบุตรนายช่างไม้เข้าป่าไปถากไม้กับบิดาเมื่อรู้สึกเบื่อก็จับแมลงวันมาตัวหนึ่งแล้วเอาหนามไม้ทองหลางมาเสียบก้นหนามทองหลางติดอยู่ในตัวแต่ไม่ทำให้แมลงวันตายต้องทุกข์ทรมานจนสิ้นอายุไขกรรมจึงตามมาในชาตินี้เมื่อรู้ว่าไม่อาจพ้นบาปกรรมได้ก็สู้รับเสียดีกว่า
ท่านราชบุตรหากต้องการแทงหลาวให้เข้าท่านก็จงไปเอาหลาวไม้ทองหลางมาเถิด
พวกราชบุรุษกระทำตามที่มันทัพพยดาบสบอกก็สามารถเสียบหลาวเข้าจากนั้นก็จัดยามเฝ้ามันทัพพยดาบสเอาไว้ทีปายณดาบสเดินทางมาหามันทัพพยดาบสด้วยความคิดถึงสหายเก่าได้ฟังข่าวในระหว่างทางว่ามันทัพพยดาบสถูกหลาวเสียบก็รีบเดินทางไปหา
ท่านทำผิดอะไรถึงได้ถูกเสียบด้วยหลาวแบบนี้
นี่เป็นเรื่องเข้าใจผิดความจริงแล้วข้าไม่ได้ทำอะไรเลย
แล้วท่านโกรธเคืองคนที่ทำร้ายท่านหรือเปล่า
ข้าไม่โกรธหรอกนี่เป็นเพราะกรรมของข้าเอง
ร่มเงาของผู้มีศีลเช่นท่านเป็นความสุขสำหรับข้า
พูดจบที่ปายณดาบสก็นั่งลงกับพื้นเอาตัวพิงหลาวอยู่เลือดที่ไหลจากตัวมันทัพพยดาบสก็หยดลงบนตัวทีปายณดาบสจนเลือดแห้งดำไปทั้งตัวจึงได้นามเติมต้นว่ากันหทิปายณะเพราะนั่งพิงหลาวตลอดคืนจนรุ่งนั่นเองวันรุ่งขึ้นพวกยามจึงไปกราบทูลเหตุการณ์นั้นแก่พระราชาพระราชาจึงรีบเสด็จไปดู
ท่านดาบททำไมท่านมานั่งพิงเหลาแบบนี้
ข้ามานั่งเฝ้าสหายมหาบพิตรทรงทราบแล้วหรือว่าสหายของข้าทำผิดจริงหรือไม่ถึงได้ลงพระราชอาญา
ความจริงเราก็ไม่ทันได้ไตร่ตรองให้ดีเพราะเห็นชาวบ้านบอกว่าดาบทผู้นี้เป็นโจร
ทีปายณดาบทกล่าวสอนพระราชาให้พิจารณาให้ถี่ถ้วนเมื่อพระราชาทรงทราบว่ามันทพยดาบทไม่มีความผิดจึงรับสั่งให้ถอนเหลาออกพวกราชบุรุษก็ไม่สามารถจะถอนเหลาออกได้
อะไรกันตอนแรกแทงไม่เข้ามาตอนนี้ถอนไม่ออกอีก
มหาบพิตรที่เป็นแบบนี้เพราะกรรมของเราเองถ้าพระองค์จะทรงกรุณาก็ให้ตัดเหลาไม้ให้เสมอหนังของเราด้วยเถิด
พระราชารับสั่งให้ราชบุรุษทำตามประสงค์ของมันทพยดาบทจากนั้นขอขมาดาบททั้งสองพร้อมทั้งนิมนต์ให้อยู่ในราชอุทยานและให้การดูแลเป็นอย่างดีตั้งแต่นั้นมามันทพยดาบทได้ชื่อเติมหน้าว่าอานิมันทพยะอาศัยอยู่ในพระราชอุทยานนั้นส่วนทีปายณดาบทเมื่อรักษาแผลมันทพยดาบทหายดีแล้วก็กลับไปสำนักนายมันทพยะผู้เป็นสหายคฤหัสถ์ของตนเมื่อทีปายณดาบทมาถึงบรรณศาลานายมันทพยะพร้อมด้วยบุตรภรรยาได้นำอาหารเครื่องหอมดอกไม้มาต้อนรับแล้วนั่งฟังข่าวอานิมันพยดาบทขณะนั้นบุตรของนายมันทพยะชื่ออยัญญทัตตกุมารเล่นลูกข่างอยู่ข้างจอมปลวกซึ่งมีงูพิษอาศัยอยู่ลูกข่างตกถูกหัวงูในโพรงจอมปลวกเมื่อกุมารนั้นล้วงมือไปเก็บลูกข่างก็ถูกงูที่กำลังโกรธกัดจนสลบ
โอ๊ย
ตายแล้วลูกเราถูกงูกัด
ท่านดาบทช่วยลูกของข้าด้วยท่านต้องมียาหรือมีคาถาช่วยลูกข้าได้แน่
ๆเราไม่มียารักษาแล้วก็ทำอย่างที่ท่านว่าไม่ได้หรอก
ถ้าอย่างนั้นท่านช่วยทำสัตยาธิสถานเพื่อช่วยลูกของข้าด้วยเถิด
เมื่อสหายขอให้ช่วยทีปายณดาบทจึงไม่อาจนิ่งดูดายได้จึงตั้งจิตอธิษฐานทำสัจจกริยาแล้ววางมือลงบนศีรษะยัญญทัตตกุมาร
เมื่อตอนแรกที่เราบวชเรายินดีประพฤติพรหมจรรย์ได้เพียง7 วันเท่านั้นจากนั้นแม้เราไม่ยินดีก็ทนประพฤติพรหมจรรย์ถึง50 กว่าปีด้วยความสัตย์อันนี้ขอให้ยัญญทัตตกุมารจงรอดชีวิตเถิด
เมื่อกล่าวสัจจกริยาแล้วพิษในกายท่อนบนของยัญญทัตตกุมารก็หายสามารถลืมตาและร้องเรียกแม่ได้
สัจจกิริยาของเราช่วยท่านได้เท่านี้ท่านจงทำสัจจกิริยาบ้างเถิด
นายมันทพยะวางมือลงที่หน้าอกบุตรชายแล้วกล่าวสัจจกิริยาบ้าง
เมื่อแขกจะมาพักที่บ้านบางครั้งข้าก็ไม่อยากให้พักแต่ก็ยอมให้พักเรื่องนี้ไม่เคยมีใครรู้มาก่อนด้วยความสัตย์นี้ขอให้ลูกของข้าจงรอดชีวิตด้วยเถิด
เมื่อบิดาทำสัจจกิริยาพิษในกายตอนเหนือสะเอวของยัญญทัตตกุมารก็หายไปสามารถลุกนั่งได้แต่ไม่สามารถยืนได้นายมันทพยะจึงบอกให้ภรรยาของตนทำสัจจกิริยาบ้าง
ข้ามีคำสัตย์ที่ไม่อาจบอกต่อหน้าท่านได้
น้องหญิงเจ้าจงทำเพื่อช่วยลูกของเราเถิด
ลูกรักงูพิษที่กัดเจ้ากับพ่อของเจ้านั้นน่ะก็เป็นสิ่งที่แม่ไม่รักไม่ชอบด้วยกันทั้งคู่ด้วยความสัตย์นี้ขอให้ลูกจงรอดชีวิตเถิด
เมื่อสิ้นสัจจกิริยาพิษทั้งหมดก็หายไปยัญญทัตตกุมารสามารถลุกขึ้นเดินและเล่นต่อไปได้นายมันทพยะได้ถามถึงสาเหตุที่ทีปายณดาบทฝืนประพฤติพรหมจรรย์ถึง50 ปีโดยไม่ยอมศึกมาเครื่องเรือง
ถ้าท่านไม่ยินดีประพฤติพรหมจรรย์แล้วทำไมท่านไม่ออกมาครองเรือนล่ะ
เพราะเราไม่อยากให้ใครว่าเราเป็นคนเหลวไหลกลับกรอกนะสิแล้วท่านล่ะถ้าไม่อยากต้อนรับแขกแล้วฝืนใจทำไมกัน
ข้าทำตามบรรพบุรุษนะสิเพราะไม่อยากให้ใครมาว่าได้ว่าไม่ทำตามธรรมเนียมของตระกูล
พูดจบนายมันทพยะจึงหันไปถามถึงสาเหตุที่ภรรยาฝืนใจครองเรือนอยู่ด้วยกันโดยไม่ได้มีความรักต่อตนเลย
น้องหญิงข้าไม่รู้มาก่อนเลยว่าเจ้าไม่ได้รักข้าทำไมเจ้ายังฝืนทนอยู่กับข้าด้วยล่ะ
เพราะตระกูลของข้าไม่มีผู้หญิงคนไหนแต่งงานมีสามีใหม่เลยนะสิข้าไม่อยากให้ใครว่าข้าได้ว่าไม่ทำตามธรรมเนียมของตระกูล
ภรรยาของนายมันทพยะรู้ตัวว่าความลับของนางจะทำให้ผู้เป็นสามีโกรธจึงขอโทษสามีต่อหน้าดาบทเพื่อจะได้รับการยกโทษ
ข้ารู้ว่าข้าไม่ควรพูดแบบนั้นแต่ทำไปก็เพื่อลูกของเรายกโทษให้ข้าด้วยเถิด
ข้าไม่โทษเจ้าหรอกต่อไปเจ้าก็อย่าได้ทำแบบนั้นอีก
เมื่อสหายยกโทษให้ภรรยาแล้วทีปายณดาบทจึงบอกให้นายมันทพยะทำทานด้วยเชื่อในกรรมและผลของกรรม
ต่อไปท่านจงทำทานด้วยศรัทธาเถิด
ข้าจะทำตามที่ท่านบอกตั้งแต่นี้ต่อไปขอให้ท่านมีจิตเลื่อมใสยินดีในการประพฤติพรหมจรรย์เถิด
ตั้งแต่นั้นมาภรรยาของนายมันทพยะก็มีความเสน่หาในสามีเป็นอย่างดีนายมันทพยะก็มีจิตเลื่อมใสถวายทานด้วยศรัทธาทีปายณดาบทก็บรรเทาความเบื่อหน่ายประพฤติพรหมจรรย์ทำฌานและอภิญญาให้เกิดขึ้นพระศาสดาแสดงธรรมเทศนาจบภิกษุผู้กระสันได้บรรลุโสดาปัตติผลและทรงประชุมชาดกว่านายมันทพยะในครั้งนั้นได้มาเป็นพระอานนท์ในบัดนี้ภรรยาในครั้งนั้นได้มาเป็นนางวิสาขาในบัดนี้บุตรในครั้งนั้นได้มาเป็นพระราหุลในบัดนี้อานิมันทพยดาบทได้มาเป็นพระสารีบุตรในบัดนี้ส่วนกันนหทีปายณดาบทในครั้งนั้นคือเราตถาคตฉะนี้แหละ
We shall conquer illusions and find true liberty that which leads us through this troubled sea. We shall go beyond the shore, be peaceful.
That ends our today's program. If you have any questions regarding our programs, please don't hesitate to contact us at info@buddhadharmatv.com. Our team is committed to sharing the noble and profound teachings of the Buddha, guiding you on your spiritual journey with his timeless wisdom. Thank you for being with us. See you tomorrow at the same time. Namo Buddhaya.